We're living in a time where global supply chains have been affected badly, and add to that, the Indian government has added a higher GST on smartphone sales, plus the rising price of the dollar. All of that included actually means that we end up paying more for our smartphones. Evidently, we got far better deals last year on smartphones. Remember when the Redmi Note 8 launched? It was launched at a price of rupees 10,000 and the specs were unbelievable for that time. And you know what? We are in 2020 and the price of that phone has also risen steadily, and last I checked it was priced at rupees 12,499. That is the starting price of the Redmi Note 8. But thankfully, Xiaomi has resurrected the Redmi Prime line of smartphones, and now we have the Redmi 9 Prime. Now this one also comes with an incredible set of specs, albeit not as good as the Redmi Note 8's specs, but this does pack quite a punch. Hi, I'm Ershad from Mr. Phone, and in this video I'm going to be unboxing the phone and giving you my full review of the Redmi 9 Prime and letting you know whether you should buy this or not. Alright, before we move on, don't forget to hit that red subscribe button and the bell icon right next to it. And if you end up liking the video, don't forget to like, share and subscribe so that it helps us grow even further. The Redmi 9 Prime comes in the standard Xiaomi white packaging with the phone's picture plastered on the front. One thing I always find odd is the color of the phone on the front is almost never matched to the color inside the box. For example, you see a mint green variant on the front here, but inside is a matte black 9 Prime, which you can clearly see written on the rear. Also, the one sent to us is the 4GB 128GB variant. This is the higher variant of the two. Anyway, let's remove the top lid. You see a sheathing that includes the case for the phone, and I'm so glad Xiaomi has bundled a black silicone case instead of a transparent one. I hate how the transparent case turns yellow after some time of usage. Under that, you get a Redmi 9 Prime in this very good looking matte black color. I'm glad Xiaomi has introduced this colorway. Let's switch it on and keep it aside for now. Also inside the box is your standard 10-watt charger and a Type-C cable. By the way, the 9 Prime can also fast charge at 18-watt speeds, so that's good, but you'll have to buy the charger separately. Alright, now we've seen what's inside the box, let's move on. The Redmi 9 Prime's outer body is made of plastic, unlike the glass-bodied Note series phones we've seen this year, but it doesn't even feel remotely cheap. I really like all the colors on offer, and this matte black one is definitely my favorite. There's a very slightly raised vertical camera module on the rear with the fingerprint scanner also integrated in it. By the way, the scanner is super fast to unlock the phone. Now this vertical module is placed inside a concentric cutout similar to the Poco X2, and there are more concentric circles emanating out of the main one to create a ridged pattern that aids in gripping the phone. And despite the 9.1mm thickness and the 198g weight, it actually feels comfortable to hold and use with one hand. Although it is odd that the phone weighs so much considering Xiaomi has actually used polycarbonate for the exterior, which is of course a lighter material. What aids the whole in-hand feel is the rear curves gently to ensure the phone sits in your palm snugly. As for the rest of the design, you get a tactile power button and the volume rocker on the right. The top has a microphone and the infrared scanner. The left edge houses the 2+1 SIM slot with a dedicated slot to add a memory card. The bottom is slightly busy with the headphone jack, a speaker grill, mics and a USB Type-C port. Xiaomi is not skimping on any functionality here. Overall, this is a great design despite being a polycarbonate body, and of course it also comes with P2I nano coating which protects the internals from water spills, so that's really good. On the front, you get this large 6.53-inch IPS LCD panel which has an FHD Plus resolution. To find a Full HD display in this price range is not very easy. It is a fairly bright display and visibility under bright sunlight is not too bad either. It is actually a decent panel. In fact, the edge bleeding has also been very well contained. The quality of this panel is actually good, and it is protected by Corning's Gorilla Glass 3. But what is not good is the oleophobic coating, and therefore I ended up with a lot of smudges on the screen. However, it is not as bad as the Realme phones, let me tell you that. Anyway, you get wideband L1 support on the phone, and I checked both Netflix and Prime, and videos were playing back at Full HD resolution, which is great. Watching videos was a pretty good experience. What I particularly enjoyed was the touchscreen response. It was surprisingly good. Latency was pretty low for a budget phone. A big chunk of the reason why quite a few folks will be looking at the Redmi 9 Prime would be the powerful specs on offer. You get a MediaTek Helio G80 chip inside, which is a gaming chip. As for the variants, you get 4 gigs of RAM and either 64GB or 128GB of internal storage, which is of the eMMC 5.1 kind. Therefore, the Android bench score isn't really great, as you can tell from what you see on your screen. The storage speed is definitely a bottleneck. The Antutu score is the highest you can get in this price range. I got a score of around 1,95,000. You can see the other benchmark screenshots as well. As for gaming, I tried PUBG and it ran HD high or smooth and ultra. It ran fairly smoothly without heating at constant 40 FPS. But I'm a bigger fan of COD Mobile, and unfortunately it plays at really low settings despite the smooth gameplay. I strongly feel the G80 can do better graphics on Call of Duty, so let's see if an update kind of fixes that. As for the speaker at the bottom, it is really tinny and not very good. Thankfully, there is a dedicated headphone jack and that works fairly well for most audio. So that's definitely a consolation. Moving on, you get the same 5020 mAh battery as we've seen on the Note 9 series this year. It can easily last you a day and a half of moderate usage. Charging the phone using an 18-watt charger took me around 2 hours. With the 10-watt inbuilt charger, it takes longer, much longer. Calls of the Redmi 9 Prime were good. You get decent sound quality through the earpiece. Plus, the 4G performance was rock solid too. No worries there. However, the one thing I like about the Redmi 9 Prime is you get support for 5 GHz Wi-Fi. I make a big deal of this because there are phones under 10,000 that skip it. As for the cameras, you get a stack of quad cameras on the rear. There's a 13 megapixel primary camera, the sensor for which Xiaomi sources from multiple vendors. There's also an 8 megapixel ultra wide angle camera, which is a secondary camera, a 5 megapixel macro, and a 2 megapixel depth sensor. On the front, there is an 8 megapixel selfie camera. Now, these are your basic camera specs, nothing too fancy schmancy. Now, the 13 megapixel camera captures fairly accurate colors, and that is very heartening. The reds, the blues, and the greens are almost true to source with a slight variation. For example, the reds here that you see on your screen are slightly deeper than I'd ideally have liked it to be. Now, when it comes to daylight shots, the phone exposes the scene well. It is fairly sharp when it comes to details, but don't expect it to do really well if you don't find ample light. However, the attached lens has a fair bit of barrel distortion that you will have to contend with. Now, you do get an automatic HDR mode, and that can detect a high dynamic range scene accurately, no problem. But the dynamic range performance is lacking, and that is something I expected in this price range. The phone really doesn't do much to pick out information from the shadows. Now, the 8 megapixel ultra wide angle camera can go as wide as 118 degrees, but it is not very sharp. I got very soft pictures and I'm not really a fan of it. This camera can also shoot 1080p 30 FPS video, and it doesn't have any sort of stabilization. Also, the footage looks very soft too. I mean, you do get a wider field of view, but the quality is really nothing worth talking about. What I found really surprising was that Xiaomi added the same 5 megapixel macro camera from the Note 9 series. It takes crispy close-up shots with fairly accurate colors too. It can shoot videos as well, but you will have to be okay with the focusing issues. I really like Xiaomi's portrait algorithm, and you can see that the edge detection is great, the facial tones are very good, and the details are sharp too. If you do take pictures of human subjects, this camera does a good job. I also really like the 8 megapixel selfie camera. You get nice facial tones and crisp details too. In fact, it does a fairly good job even indoors. Now, when you go low light, it does throw up soft details, and the flash doesn't do much to help either. And moving on, the selfie portraits are really good too, whether it is in good light or indoors. Plus, you get these color filters that look damn nice. The low light performance is where the Redmi 9 Prime takes a major hit. You don't get a night mode, and the sensor couldn't resolve the details in low light. Whether you're shooting videos with the front camera or the rear one at 1080p 30 FPS, which is the maximum, you don't really get any sort of image stabilization. The rear camera footage also doesn't look very good, with soft details and noise in the darker portions of the footage. The sound recording is alright though. Hey guys, I'm shooting a 1080p 30 FPS video using the rear camera on the Redmi 9 Prime. You can let me know what you thought about the image quality, the image stabilization, and the sound recording. As I shoot directly into the light, and you can see that the dynamic range is not too great. It cannot retrieve detail from the shadows, but then again, when you shoot at objects which are lit up properly, it doesn't do a bad job. But the front camera can in fact shoot fairly usable footage, as you can tell. Now, you can shoot 120 FPS slow motion videos at 720p resolution, and it looks okay. Overall, the cameras are good enough for some casual shooting, but don't expect any miracles from it. I really like the macro mode as well. But I was definitely disappointed by the fact that you don't get a night mode for low light photography. So that's definitely a letdown. As for the software, you get regular Android 10 with MIUI 11 on top of it. I'm guessing MIUI 12 should come soon as well. And you get a bunch of unnecessary preloaded apps and games. I'm never going to use Zilly, and if you won't either, I guess you can uninstall that along with the entire folder of games with Rummy King and Crazy Juicer and I don't know who plays these games. Interestingly, I didn't find any ads as such, so that's good, and no banned apps either. And Xiaomi is obviously changing the cleaner app definition to remove Clean Master, and that should change in a couple of months. The clarification is already out. So yeah, not much to worry about now, I guess. Now overall, this is the same MIUI experience that most of us already know about. It works smoothly, and that's what matters. So the Redmi 9 Prime is a well-rounded smartphone and a great value for under rupees 10,000. Now when you're looking at alternatives, while some of them skip out on a full HD display, others don't even give you support for 5 GHz Wi-Fi networks, which is basically no support for Wi-Fi AC. Now if you're looking at a phone like the Narzo 10, which comes with a similar G80 processor, that's more expensive, and of course again it doesn't come with a full HD display either. Now I also looked for an older smartphone which could be an alternative to the Redmi 9 Prime, and I chanced upon the Realme 5. Of course, it's got a Snapdragon 665, which has a better fabrication process despite the fact that it's not an all-out gaming chipset. Having said that, the Realme 5 doesn't come with fast charging support nor full HD display either. So overall, I tried to find a phone that could beat the Redmi 9 Prime in this price range, but I couldn't actually. All the phones that I paired up with the Redmi 9 Prime actually came up short in a few parameters most of the times. Now the Redmi 9 Prime is the phone you should pick up if you have rupees 10,000 right now, and it will serve you well for your media consumption needs or for some casual gaming as well. Obviously the camera performance is not the best out there. I mean, it's still pretty good. You can still get some decent shots out of it. Evidently Xiaomi had to do some cost cutting somewhere, and the cameras is what it decided to pick up. Well, that's it from me. I'm Ershad from Mr. Phone. I hope you guys liked our review of the Redmi 9 Prime. Do let us know in the comment section below what phones would you like us to compare the 9 Prime with, or if you want us to check anything specific out about the 9 Prime. I will definitely see if that is possible for you guys. Until next time, this is Ershad from Mr. Phone signing off. Goodbye and Godspeed, my friends.